everyone. Here we are. We're here recording a video. It's been a hell of a long time since I've done this. You know, we had the show going, me and Gilps. We were talking about the Blue Jays mostly, but it was a tough year for them, and we haven't really done this in a while. But I've got a special guest on here today, and what are we going to talk about? Team Canada hockey. We've got the Four Nations Faceoff coming up. It's a critical time for men's hockey in Canada, in my opinion, and we're gonna get down to it. So, special guest, why don't you introduce yourself?
What's good, everybody? I'm Chucky P, and we're
Yeah,
uh we're here to discuss some foreign nations.
hell yeah, we are.
It's gonna be an interesting topic.
Yep.
Canada's looking not as good as we did a few years back, but
Well, we're still looking good, but we're looking in trouble, I'd say, compared to some other countries. Now,
yeah,
it's a critical time, and I say that because we don't need to get into this in too much detail because we all know it's been such a long time since we've had this opportunity, right? Again, it was Commissioner Bettman that brought the NHL players to the Olympics in the first place, but it's also because of him that we haven't had this in so long. And there's been a lot of players that have had their opportunity to possibly represent Canada at the top level that never had that opportunity because their time came and went, right? There's also a lot that maybe the role has changed or it's going to be a little different. But I started thinking about this last year, right? Because the 2026 Olympics coming up, we heard talk of the Four Nations tournament last year, about a year ago, or around the time of the All-Star game, which again, it kind of annoys me. This is instead of the All-Star game. So my God, why didn't they think of this like 4 years ago? Well, it's because Russia would have been a part of it. So which country would you leave out? Now you can leave out one of them because they're not included anyway.
yeah, would almost have to make it Team Europe or make it like a Six Nations
Yeah.
Cup.
Hey, the World Cup of Hockey. I love that tournament. Team North America was gimmicky, but Team Europe was a pretty good idea. Guys like
Team Europe was a
Kopitar.
great idea.
Kopitar wouldn't have had that opportunity. He put his country on the map, but they wouldn't have
Freddie
been in the
Anderson
top
as
eight.
well.
Yep, you're damn right. And that was a great tournament. But
Made a
seeing
competitive team.
Team Canada playing at this top level with again, we've had world championships. We've had some great world championships, some great world juniors in the last few years. Not to mention, of course, our women's team, defending world champions, and they've had some fantastic tournaments, defending Olympic champions too, right? But our men's team at the highest level, with all due respect to what we've done since then, we haven't seen this since 2016. It's been a long
Yeah,
time. And we dominated that tournament. Will we dominate this one though? There's some question marks,
some big
and
ones.
I say it's a critical time because Canadian men's hockey in general, honest to God, 2 years ago we were in a great place because we won back-to-back World Juniors, even that summer World Juniors. Mason McTavish doing what he did, saving that goal. What was it? Kent Johnson scoring the winner, and then winning
Yeah,
it again there in Halifax. Connor Bedard was amazing, winning the World Championship too that year. I mean, they won 2021. That was a fantastic World Championship that we won. 2022, we took the silver. 2023, won gold. Pretty good place, right? But last year, World Championship, we came fourth, man. We came fourth. We lost a semifinal to Switzerland, which coming fourth without Russia is tough, right? No excuses now, right?
even with Russia, fourth is not really cutting it for
Yep.
expectations in
And World
Canada.
Juniors, again, that Czechia, they had a great team. They had a hell of a team in 2023 that we beat for gold. With all due respect to them, they had a good team again in 2024, but I saw no reason that we
Canada
should have
doesn't
lost to
lose in
them
the
in the
quarterfinals,
no reason that we should have lost them in the quarterfinal, and we did. So World
especially
Junior
after being
team,
top of the group.
World Junior team, and World Championship team both falling short of a medal last year. Not to mention the most recent Olympic team also fell short of a medal. I don't give a rat's ass what players are there. It's the Olympic hockey, our sport at the highest level that it can possibly be at. We need to show the rest of the world that we're the best. And the other countries were handicapped too, right? They also didn't have NHL players. but we didn't win a medal in that either. So last Olympics, last World Championship, last World Juniors. Again, 2 years ago, the story would have been different, but those are the three main levels that we like to talk about, right? Men's hockey, medalists in all three of them in the most recent. So this Four Nations tournament, you can say what you want about it. It's a gimmick. It's not. It's legit. I don't care. It's the first time we've had this opportunity to see these players, our absolute best against the best, compete, right?
Yeah,
And we need to
haven't
win.
seen that.
We need to show the rest of the world that we're still the best. Because if we don't, again, we still have the 2026 Olympics, which we're hopeful about NHL players going to that one, and there's a lot of hope. But I think right now we need to make a big statement, right? And the bottom
Yeah,
line, hey, if we don't win the Four Nations tournament, fine, I'm okay with coming second. But for the love of God, we can't lose to the Americans, right?
that's the
Lose to
team
the
I'd be
Swedes,
most worried about.
lose to the Swedes, lose to the Finns, so what? But you lose to the Americans with their Hughes brothers and their Kachuk brothers and whatever else brother combinations they have. You know that they're going to brag about it for 2 years and they're going to tell us that we suck because that's how they are.
I I
I
don't know. It's
respect the Americans as a hockey country, but when they win, you know that they like to brag about it and they like to tell us that we're not the best. So we can't let that happen and we need to show them, right? We've been waiting all these years that we've been saying our team, we're still the best, we're still the best. I've been making these mock rosters for years, right? Since we've had the last tournament like this. I've had to tweak them. Players have moved on. The best players in our league have changed, but to be honest, I made myself a roster last year around the All-Star game. I had the 2026 Olympics in mind mostly, but also the Four Nations tournament. I tweaked it a little bit because of this year so far, the season. We're close to American Thanksgiving right now, so we have a pretty good sample of who the best teams and the best players are indeed. So I've tweaked my roster from last year a little bit, and I'd say I've made a pretty good sample roster for I think what it should be, right? I know people will disagree with it. You might disagree with it, but I think it's about time we get into it, eh?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's been a tough time. It's strange because the trajectory of like international hockey basically since COVID, like since 2020, it's totally different. Like Canada, you can make a pretty good argument that since 2020, our like international projection trajectory has gone down. Like maybe Canada was like significantly above the States, I
Uh,
would have said 4 or 5 years ago. Like
but
not a lot, but like a margin. We were
I'd
better.
say that we
Like,
went up since then, and then in the last year and a half, we've kind of gone back down. Again, I follow every tournament, right? I follow everything, so I pay attention to this stuff. And look, every year I make a damn mock roster for who our best team should be, and it's changed so much because every year that we don't have a tournament, it's another opportunity lost for some players. But yeah, I mean, 2 years ago,
overall, though,
especially,
the
right?
states have been on the rise.
They have,
5 years
but a few
ago, the
times,
states were not where they were now. The
but in the
states
world
are,
in the world championship at times they've been really bad, really bad, right? And they're historically bad in that tournament.
yeah.
But the last couple of years, they had some damn good teams in it. They won. They did better than us last year, right? I can't recall actually. To be honest, after Canada lost that semifinal, I can't recall. I think we played the U.S. in the bronze medal game. I think I don't really remember,
I
but
thought the US got silver, maybe. I'm
maybe.
not sure.
But at the end of the day, doing worse than them in the World Championship, a tournament that they historically don't care about, is bad. And you're right. You're right because as our best on best team at the top level has stayed kind of the same. Players come and go, but we feel kind of the same about our team. Theirs has definitely risen because Matthews is like almost in his prime now, right? You could say 70 goal
Yeah.
scorer, for God's sakes. The Kachuk brothers, both, the Hughes brothers, Jason Robertson, Jake
You can make a
Gensel.
pretty good argument that top sixes on both teams are just about
Yeah.
even.
Their toughness is definitely not what ours is, but does that outweigh what they have in terms of their pure skill, right? That's always been the case. The Americans, the college guys, they have that skill and they have some big egos for sure, more so than us because it's a different culture there growing up playing hockey in the US than here. They're maybe raised a little bit differently, but they've got some pretty good players. They sure do. And we respect them. And I don't know if they
Literally
respect us the same way, but
for the first time in our lifetime, I think like Canada's got a pretty even match. Like Russia was when we were younger, like maybe 15 years
well,
ago, Russia was
I'll tell
always
you, the
close.
2010 Olympics, that was Canada Russia was the biggest matchup ever. And boy, that happened in the
Yeah,
quarterfinal.
it
Hey,
was
we're not here to talk about that though. We're here to talk about the 2025 Four Nations face off.
it's just crazy US's
Yeah.
trajectory. Like 5 years
Yeah.
ago, US was not where like we're neck and neck with the States
We are.
now.
Well, we're still better, but the goaltending is an issue, which we'll get into that. I think bottom
Yeah.
line, it's about time I tell you about my roster, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are your lines organized as lines? I just
My
gave my
lines are organized as lines, but I'll tell you this, as always, in a top level tournament like this, I don't see first line, second line, third line, fourth line. I see they're pretty even,
combinations and pretty
but if anything, top six, bottom six platoon, right? Top six platoon,
yeah, I was
bottom
gonna
six
say
platoon.
my top six is
Yeah,
definitely a top six.
it's a platoon. But so here we go, right? I'm just gonna share my I'm gonna share my whole roster line by line.
Is okay,
I'll
so
put
we're
I'll put the
going top
pictures up
six to
on you for
bottom
you
six.
guys. But we'll go my first line, McDavid at center, Hyman on left wing, Sam Reinhart on right wing, right? Hyman,
All
right?
right, that's
50
interesting.
goal scorer, right? I know he hasn't gotten off to that best start this year, and it's a little bit concerning, but I think he will come around. And what he's done the last couple of years with McDavid, I think what's important to stress is what a short tournament this is. It's only like 7 games, right? Even the Olympics are longer
Yeah.
than that. You don't have time to build chemistry. McDavid and Hyman have that chemistry. They really do. And I think that you've got to put them together. It's like Chris Kunitz. Zach Hyman is literally Chris Kunitz from 2014, right? He made the team specifically to play with Crosby. But that was 2014. We were a little bit closer to the dead puck era than we are now. So Chris Kunitz was no 50 goal scorer, right? And Crosby was no 150
Yeah, we've
point
got
scorer.
some absolute
Things have
flyers these
changed.
days.
So for Hyman, yeah, Hyman with his 50 goals is good enough to make the team. Again, this year, it's in question, right? It's in question whether he'd make it. But I'll say this, if Hyman is on the roster, he is playing with McDavid, right? Guarantee, without a doubt. If you don't put Hyman and McDavid together, then Hyman's not even on the roster, right? They're a package deal. And it benefits McDavid just as much because that chemistry matters. It matters so much. A guy who plays with him day in and day out, who scores 50 goals with him, McDavid puts up 150 points or whatever playing with them. I think it's crucial. So again, if Hyman continues to struggle, then maybe by the end of the month, if he doesn't make the team, he doesn't make the team. But if he, as long as he is showing that he's bouncing back like he has the last couple weeks, I think he's on the team and he's playing with McDavid, right? Do you agree?
I don't know. He's one of my question marks right now. There's
He
other guys
is.
with hot starts this season I think have like kind of surpassed him for me. But I would agree that
Yeah.
Hyman's a wasted
But I'm
roster spot if you take him and you just plug him on the
yes. I don't care. Like you said, guys that have surpassed him. I don't care where
oh,
they
okay.
are in the
I was just gonna
lineup.
say Hyman, it's tough for me. I left him off. I have him as one of
Did
my
you?
extras
Sure. And you can do that. He's had a bad
just
start this
because
year,
of
and that's
partway
tough.
through this season because of his small
Yeah, it's
sample.
tough. But what he's done the last couple of years and this year, he's started to
But
bounce
yeah,
back.
he is
I'm
on the
sure he'll
team. He has to
continue.
be with McDavid.
I agree, right? Don't even bother scratching him. If he's not with McDavid, don't put him on the team. And you say like other
Yeah,
guys
he's
have
a wasted
surpassed
roster
him.
spot. He's not.
Sure, there are other guys that are in the lineup that are having better seasons than him. But if Hyman's on the team, he's playing with McDavid. They're a package. And
Yeah,
Reinhart on the first line right wing.
yeah.
I'll be honest. So when I made this lineup last year, partly with the Olympics in 2 years in mind, but also this tournament. Well, the Olympics are actually less than 2 years, I guess. But I had Bedard playing first line right wing with those two. Bedard hasn't quite gotten off to the start that I hoped this year. It's crazy high expectations that I have for him. I mean, he's having a pretty damn good year, and I think you have to put him on this team. And I do have him in my lineup, but I just think After the season he had last year, I expected him to take off like McDavid in his second year. Hasn't quite just yet, but I'm putting the 50 goal scorer, Sam Reinhart, also a right handed shot, plays right wing and center. I put him on McDavid's right wing. So surely they'll find some chemistry. But again, if not, they can change it up, but there's not a lot of time. So, you know, that's that. But second line, this is where it gets good, right? Second line, in my
I think you know
opinion,
where you're going second line.
you cannot separate these guys without a doubt. Like, so we got Marchand left wing, Crosby center, McKinnon right wing.
I
Tell me
got
right
those my
now, what do these three guys have in common?
Nova Scotia line.
The Nova Scotia connection. Let's go.
That's my top line for me. I was
Top,
thinking the same
hey,
thing about
hey,
chemistry. I was like, you've got to have them chemistry.
top line,
Marchand,
second line, either way.
to me, that's the go-to only because of chemistry. Like
Chemistry.
McDavid's the greatest, but the chemistry is unmatched on that top
And
line.
then we've talked about this. So the Crosby, Marchand, Bergeron line was a lock for about 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it never happened since the World Cup. Bergeron's retired, right? Crosby and Marchand have only played together in that tournament, but the point was Crosby and Bergeron have played together at this top level since the World Juniors in 2005. They found that chemistry and learned that they had it for each other. Marchand and Bergeron had the Bruins chemistry. And in 2016, we put the three of them together and figured out what a great line this is.
Now you
Again,
had that blistering
we
speed
would have,
with
we would have,
McDavid on
yeah,
the wing, or with
McKinnon,
McKinnon on the wing.
yeah. It's a shame that we never got to see that line again because of how good they would have been. Bergeron's retired, but the easiest replacement in the world is Nate McKinnon because you know Crosby and Marchand are going to have that connection from the World Cup of Hockey, and you know the mutual friend and Patrice Bergeron. But McKinnon, like I think they might have played together in the 2015 World Championship. I'm not sure. Otherwise, I don't know if they played together, but they're
But
from the
they all
same
train
town.
together.
They're from the
Yeah.
same town. They've been in enough Tim Hortons commercials together. You know they have chemistry.
The three of them train together for like a month a year during the
Yeah.
off season.
McKinnon is a center, but as a right hand shot playing on Crosby's right wing, I have no doubt that they'll find chemistry. And Marchand
That
on the
blistering
left,
speed,
yeah,
he's going to be busting guys down the wing, and then you'll have Marchand in front for some tap ins.
yeah,
That's pretty
beauty.
dangerous.
And again, something we didn't discuss actually was the six guys that have already been named to the roster. I know some people might have had their doubts about Marchand, but he was already named to the team. So we know that he's there. That's out of the question.
He was
If
kind of
he's
a lock.
there, if he's there, he's playing with Crosby. Just like if Hyman's there, he's playing with McDavid. If Marchand's not playing with Crosby, don't put him on the team. But he is on the team, so we know that they're together no matter what. And I just say, I know Craig Button disagreed with me on this, but if Crosby and Marchand are together, why the hell would you not put Nate McKinnon on the right wing? You've got it,
Yeah.
right? You've got it.
This is the first year McKinnon's like smaller sample
Now
size.
McKinnon's a veteran.
Yeah, and he's never really been an elite face-off guy. And I think in a tournament with this much skill, I think
Right?
everybody who's going to be taking draws, you've got to be
And it
like,
depends on the
you gotta
side
be
of the
ready.
ice. Because again, Crosby's at center, McKinnon's on the right. But when it's on McKinnon, it gives you
Yeah.
options. Because if when it's on the other side of the ice, you've got McKinnon taking those big face-offs and Crosby on the wing. So
Mhm.
it opens up your options. Now, third line, of course, this is where it gets more interesting. I said Connor Bedard. He hasn't gotten off to a great start this year, but it's a pretty damn good start. And we know just the hype around him. We've seen what he can do playing for Canada at the World Junior level. It was incredible. He has to be on this team and he has to be getting regular ice time. So I didn't really find a spot for him on the fourth line. So I put him on the third line. And as a center, funny enough, actually, because, right handed shots are hard to come by. On defense, it's especially a problem for Canada that we're overloaded on the right, but offense as well. So
Yeah.
a
My team,
right-handed center like Bedard, I put him on his off, and I think he can do that. He can
just
do that.
looking at my team as well, I've got like six total lefties. Like
Yeah,
it's righty dominant, which
funny.
is crazy. 10 years ago,
Yeah,
we
just
were
like me, right?
struggling for righties.
Good Canadian kids. We grow up writing with our right hand. We learn to shoot with our right hand. We can snipe. That's the way she goes. But either way, we have more righties for whatever reason. Bedard is a bit of a fluke to that because Bedard is a very gifted player and he's right-handed. But As a natural center and as a scholar of the game, I have no doubt that he'll be able to play his off wing at this level. So I put Bedard on the off wing with Braden Point at center. Braden Point, obviously already named to the team, and Mitch Marner on the right wing, which Point and Marner, they're same division, right? They've got some, I'm sure they'll have chemistry with that. They played against each other enough times. Braden Point, you could make a case maybe being on that first line right wing instead of Reinhardt, but I think Point would be a fine third line center for this team.
Yeah, I think Point brings you that grit.
And Marner on his right wing, and then Bedard playing his off wing on the left. I think it's that'll be a fine line. And fourth line, where it gets really interesting
This
because we have
isn't.
bubble
This is
guys.
yeah.
So again, with Rice, so actually, I'll start with this, John Tavares, because
Ooh.
he's a guy who for the last few years might have been left off this roster at times, but he was a bubble guy, right? But he had kind of a bounce back season last year. This season, he's having he's having a pretty good year this year, right? For the Leafs, an even bigger bounce back year, I'd say.
I got
I'd
Johnny
say,
Toronto in there.
yeah.
He's my fourth
And
line center. We need some
but
lefty
also the dedication, the experience. He's played for Canada at so many levels, so many times. And last year, right, the World Championship.
captain.
And let's be honest, like Marner, Riley, they could have gone, but they get eliminated from the NHL playoffs. They don't care. Tavares, even whoever, I don't remember who the GM of Canada was, but he said, honest to God, we've got the Four Nations Cup, we've got the Olympics. Come play for Canada and the World Championships, for God's sakes. It's a tryout. Every player who's here, it's a tryout. And Tavares took that seriously. As a bubble guy, he went. He had a great tournament. So I'd say he has to be on the roster. Now, and I'll put it this way, like I built this roster with the IAHF format where you can dress 13 forwards and 7D. It's not like that. Four Nations Faceoff is going to be NHL rules, but whatever. You're the 13th forward. You're a healthy scratch, but you're going to work your way in. You don't have many games to
Oh, he's your
decide, but
scratch.
the first two games you're going to be in and out, swapping with other guys. Anyway, the point being, I had Tavares originally actually with Marner on that third line left wing, but because there's so many other guys and it's so competitive, I took him out there. So he's actually my 13th forward, and I say
Hmm.
that because he will work his way in. You
Okay.
that 13th forward, right? The first three games, whatever, they're gonna swap their way in and out. But my preliminary lineup, at least as I have it, instead of Tavares, fourth line left wing, I put Mark Stone playing on his off wing.
Hmm.
Mark Stone, he's having a really good start this year, is he not?
He's having
He's
a
a
good start.
he's a
He's injured
solid
now though.
player. He is two way, and again a righty. But I googled like because I think he's played left wing in his life, and yes, he has. So I
He's a
said, you
pretty
know what,
natural right winger though.
he is, and that's one again like Shifley I have on the other right wing, so he'll come out of the lineup for a game or two to see.
Shifley was
But
definitely a bubble guy going into the
he
season. I
was
think he's pretty much a lock after the
he's
start they've
having a
had.
great year. Like a few years ago, he'd maybe been out of the picture, but he had a 40-goal season
Mhm.
last year, had a pretty big points year. Not
And he's
quite what he
picked up
used to
the
be, but
defensive side of the game. Like he was
he
a weak
has. So
defensive center a couple years ago. Like 2021, you would
yeah,
not have put them in that conversation. He's pretty good two-way now. Like he's
yeah.
responsible.
And he's on a like 10-game scoring streak right now, right? So I put him
He's
on
put
that
himself in the
roster on the lineup, fourth line right wing. Again, he's a center, but he's right-handed shot. He'll play right wing. Stone as a natural right winger. I know he can play his off wing because he's done it in the past, so he'll play left wing. And my center on that line is Robert Thomas, good Aurora kid, right?
Bobby Tom.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, that he was on
He,
that 2018 World Junior team, but
he's out now
I
though.
wanted to talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. But he was on the team. There's there's absolutely nothing that we've heard in the news against him, and I'm pretty confident that he had nothing to do with the events that happened with that team. But the bottom line for this tournament, he has been cleared along with Cale McCarr. So look, he's put up some amazing stats last year. I know he's out right now.
Just went out four to
Oh, he just
six
went
weeks.
out.
He's got an ankle injury
Yeah,
now.
but he'll be back for February, and he's a
Ankle's a tough one though.
he's a
That could
two-way player too. and his face-offs have been great, right? As a fourth line center, that's what you need, that face-off ability. So as a 70-point scorer, even I think he put up 80 something last year. And that's a guy I want as a fourth line center. And with Tavares as the extra, Tavares can win his faceoffs. Tavares can do anything. He's the 13th forward. So that's my forward group. I'm going to flash the picture on there, but I think it's a pretty solid group. And now I'm going to talk about defense. So interesting because I had Devon Taves actually slotted in there with Cale Makar. Again, on defense, we have more righties than lefties, and it's a problem. But a lefty, Devon Taves, he's got that natural chemistry with Cale Makar, but he's off to a slow start this year. There's enough other guys. So what did I do? I put Josh Morrissey with Cale Makar.
That's who I got as my top pair.
Morrissey is a lock, isn't he?
Morrissey's start to the season, it's a guarantee. Morrissey Makar is the top pair. That's the shutdown pair. They're going to create the offense.
Offense and defense. They're shut down. Like Cale Makar, like what a great offensive defenseman he is. He plays damn defense too, right? And I think Josh Morrissey, from what I've seen lately, he'll do the same. He'll put up the offensive numbers, not like Cale Makar, but some pretty damn good offensive numbers. But he'll play some shutdown D.
It's rivaling that Keith Doughty pairing from like 10 years ago. I don't know if
really
Morrissey's quite there yet, but I think he's getting there.
I agree though. That's my top pair.
Yeah, easily.
Now my second pair, it's controversial because there's a veteran player that some people might not even have on their roster, but goddamn Alex Pietrangelo, however the hell you want to pronounce his name. God, he is on that team. He's having a good season, and he had a good season offensively last year too. Look at his veteran presence. He's won at so many levels, and he can shut down. He's still putting up the offensive stats. I had him as the seventh D man, maybe, but again, in this tournament, there is no seventh D man. You're only playing 6 per game, so he's on that second pair, and he's playing with Shea Theodore on the left because they're teammates. You can't separate them. They don't play together all the time, but they've played together enough, and they're familiar with each other.
They're cup winners together.
Yep.
They were the top pair on a cup winning team, and Petrangelo's even captained the team to the cup win.
And Shea Theodore can play shutdown defense. I feel like still he's more known for his offense, but
he's a good defender.
Pietrangelo or Petrangelo, however you say it, he's the last, earlier in his career, one of the best offensive defensemen. Now, still a great offensive defenseman, but there is not a single defenseman on this team that I would trust to shut down.
Yeah.
Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Jason Robertson, all those American players. Who do I want on defense? This is the guy I want shutting them down.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be a different case, I think, if Doughty was healthy, but with his injury in preseason.
And we'll talk about him later, but I still have him on my roster. But third pair, and this is a tough one because I have, again, there's limited lefties, and I have Morgan Riley on there.
You got the least bias coming in.
No, that's not bias. I think that he's there because he deserves it. There are some other guys in contention, like Devon Taves, but I mean, Devon Taves is mostly there for offense, I'd say, with his numbers. And I don't know. If he's not going to play with Cale Makar, I'd feel like I still have him on my roster, maybe, but I don't know if I'd put Devon Taves there. So if not him, I'm putting Morgan Riley with Evan Bouchard, because Evan Bouchard, what did he put up last year? 70 points?
Evan Bouchard's your 6?
Yeah, Evan Bouchard.
Okay.
How many points did he put up last year with the Oilers? 70? 80?
I don't even remember. I remember his playoff run was pretty good, though. Didn't he hit 30 in the playoffs?
Probably. He was incredible offensively. Now, that's my only concern is Riley and Bouchard. There isn't really a shutdown guy. They're both kind of offensive. And that's why I wanted Riley with Pietrangelo, maybe, and Bouchard with Theodore. I didn't want to separate the two Golden Knights, though. But I trust that as the veteran guy, Riley will be the shutdown guy. Bouchard can play offensive. Riley can do that too. But he knows his role on this national team. There's enough offensive defensemen. He doesn't need to do that. He can play shutdown. He can do that. So he's a shutdown guy on that pairing. And my 7th D-man, who again, we can't dress a 7th D-man, but he'll be the guy in and out. Noah Dobson. I couldn't possibly leave him out of this because Noah
I'm
Dobson
surprised
has,
he wasn't in your top six, to be honest.
well, he's put up very similar numbers to Evan Bouchard, but I had to pick one of the two, and I wasn't going to take Pietrangelo out of that lineup. And again, Cale Makar is without a doubt. They're all righties. That's the problem. So, but I mean, for God's sakes, Noah Dobson, if he's playing on a national team, I want to see him keep his stick in one piece.
Yeah. I don't know. Dobson to me, he reminds me a lot of Doughty. I got
He
Dobson
does,
at
but
my six.
okay.
I think
That's the
he's
one
like the
issue, man.
young.
Playing on the national team, last time I saw him play at this level, he cracked under pressure because he broke his stick. So, hey, Dobby, keep your stick in one piece, and then you're on that top pair maybe. Well, not top because Makar's there, but on the second pair at least. But
Defense definitely has a
it's
couple
between him
holes.
and Bouchard. Again, there's so many options, and that's great. So many options on the right side. Like we want to like a
You could almost
absolutely
take out
amazing.
Taves and Riley all together and put Bouchard with
Well, I took
Petrangelo.
Taves out of there, but Theodore, you mean?
No, I
But
mean like
you
no
can move
Riley,
one of
no
them
Taves. You could put Bouchard with Petrangelo.
on the left side. You're saying, yeah, and you could. It's an
Yeah,
option, but
flip a righty to the left.
yeah, I even thought about moving Makar to his offside, right? But I said, don't mess with it. Put him with Morrissey, like you agreed.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's that for defense. But I guess we might as well get into goaltending, which we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so we're in the goaltending now, which we've discussed this off camera, and this is we already knew this. This is our weakness, but at the same time, this is where things get tense because there is so many options, and there's also so many options that may be fatal. So I'm going to start with Jordan Binnington because he has been discussed by many as the favorite for the past maybe year and a half. But look, in that time, what has he done to prove that?
He has done everything in his power to prove he should not be on the roster.
You're saying even on the roster, I at least had him as the backup. But look, I talk about the 2024 World Championship and how crucial it was because every player that was eligible, this was an opportunity for them to prove themselves. And Tavares, I think that as a bubble guy has helped earn his spot on this roster as the captain of that team, as a leader, doing what he could. We talked about this. And I think we both agree that he's earned a spot on the roster, whether he's in the lineup, whether he's the 13th forward, whether he plays some games, whatever. But Binnington, on the other hand, has not done that because he played in that tournament with an opportunity to prove himself as Canada's number one goalie. And what did he do? He gave up 6 goals against Austria, for God's sakes.
And they weren't good goals. I remember watching some of that and I was like, holy shit, like he's gonna blow the
No, no Canadian goalie, no Team Canada has given up 6 goals against Austria at any goddamn level until the 2024 World Championship. It's Austria, for God's sakes. They didn't even have Thomas Vanek. They didn't have Michael Graviner. Did they even have
Yeah, I don't
Marco Rossi? They might have.
I think he was out still. I don't think they had a single NHLer took the ice that
That
day.
was brutal. They were up 6-1, right? Like, yeah, you could be up by more than that against Austria, but 6-1 is a convincing win, like it should be against that team. And Binnington gave up 5 goals in the third period for them to tie it, only for Tavares to win it in overtime.
Yeah,
So
and it
at
wasn't
that
even like
level,
it. They played bad. It was they were like three of those goals. I think like the average
yeah.
high school goalie could have stopped a good couple of
And
those.
yes, he like what it was only that game, but yeah, as a whole in that tournament, he wasn't great, and he had that horrible game. But even in the NHL this season, like he had a horrible game in fantasy. I have him, which, by the way, also concerning is that my fantasy team is like 90% Canadian guys. I literally called my team no Euros because I was embracing the nationalities that I drafted. It's my subconscious bias towards Canadian players, but my team is in dead last because I have guys like Binnington in net who gave me
Yeah.
like -10 the other night. What team was that against? I can't remember, but he had a horrible game.
It was bad. I can't remember the team, but it was like 19 shots against, like 8 goals
Oh
allowed.
my
And then he had that
God.
one crazy save though.
But you can't be doing that at this level. And
It was
again, he won that Stanley Cup with the Blues, but since then, he hasn't been great. He's had some attitude problems. And look, I know the World Championship last year was one example, but it's not the first time it's happened because I remember the 2013 World Juniors too, right? That was an opportunity for him to shine. He was the backup to Malcolm Subban. Malcolm Subban shat the bed with, forgive my language, but yes, he did that against the Americans in the semifinal. Golden opportunity for Binnington in the bronze medal game to show who he is. And what did he do? He was chased like halfway before the first period even ended. He gave up 3 goals to Russia. They were down like 3-0. Canada ended up losing a 6-5 game in overtime to lose the bronze medal. Of course, it was 6-5, right? It's Canada, Russia. But
Yeah.
maybe if Binnington didn't, they went down 3-0 in the first 10 minutes of that game with Binnington. And of course, everyone forgot who the guy was for the next like 10 years until well, 8 years until he was called up by the Blues. And then the rest was history. But
Bennington's
Binnington's,
only in this conversation because he's won a cup.
that's literally it. His track
Like
record playing for Canada from the World Juniors that year, not good. World Championship
2020
last year,
onward,
not good.
he's been super average
And
at
even in the
best.
NHL, he's not been great. He's had some attitude problems. So,
He's
but
inconsistent.
but
He
he's
has good
inconsistent.
games.
When he's good, he has been really good, and that's why I still have him on my roster. But he is not the starter. Who did I give the starter to? Well, it's questionable because God, our goaltending is weak compared to what it used to be, and it's a
Remember
concern.
back in the days when Fleury was the third goalie?
Remember when Quebec used to give us like all 3 goalies? Well,
Yeah.
what's happened now? They're all Russian. They're all American. But I chose my boy Stewie Skinner as the number one. Coming off his Stanley Cup final appearance last year, he's not been great, but he's had a decent season this year. And that's the thing with him. He's not great, but he's decent. He's consistent enough at least. And looking at all the Canadian goalie options that we have right now, and as somebody who went to the Stanley Cup finals last year, look, I chose him as the number one. Again, the tournament's 2 months away, 3 months away, February, right? That could still change, but I chose
It's
Stu
funny.
Skinner. I chose Stu Skinner as the number one, with Binnington as the backup, and Darcy Kemper very willing to take either of their jobs as the third string. Darcy Kemper as the veteran, who's kind of past
He's
his
got a cup.
prime, but still very experienced. He's played for Canada and
He's a cup
he's a
winner.
reliable guy. So I have him as the third string, but that could easily change, and he could easily take one of their jobs.
Yeah, goalies are a question mark.
So
Stu Skinner he's basically Bennington, just better all around, I think. Like I would say Skinner's inconsistent, but his bad is like high 800 save percentage, but his good is like
amazing, and he
90.
can lead a team. He's shown that
Like if he gets hot, he is amazing,
he
but
is.
he doesn't really keep that. Like you don't know what you're
Again,
gonna get. Just Bennington is worse.
we're
You don't know what you're
concerned
gonna
either
get.
way. Like we were hoping in the off season, knowing this was a concern, that maybe one of our guys would jump out. They haven't exactly, but there's
It's
some other options. I think Aiden Hill, the Stanley Cup winner with the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, he hasn't been great this year, but he's another option that I put possibly on the roster, along with the former Brock Badger, Logan Thompson,
there's
the
it,
the
it's
right-handed
strange. Like
catching beauty, Logan Thompson.
I think that
If
would throw a curveball at
It
opponents
would.
as
You
well.
look at the Leafs last night playing against them. Domi
Yeah.
on a breakaway, shooting for his glove side because he thought it was blocker.
Yeah. Well, he scored on a blocker on a breakaway last year.
Yeah, because he thought it was glove side.
It's I think like when was the last time you've seen like even a somewhat decent right hand catching goalie? Like it's been like 10 years.
Jean-Sebastien Aubin. Was he even
Decent.
right-handed catch? I don't know.
I think he was, but that's like 20 years ago
And
now.
he wasn't even that good.
Yeah, I can't remember in the like I don't was
Or
Nicholas
one was it was
Backstrom?
Mason? Steve Mason, right-handed? Right? He might
Steve
have been.
Mason was. He was good for
Yeah,
like a
he was
year,
good for a
but
little bit. Yeah,
I was
a
thinking was
couple world
Nicholas
championships for
Backstrom.
Canada. He might have been, but he's a Swede.
I can't remember, but
He
there
might have been.
basically there hasn't been a deep like Jose Theodore is like the last
Yes,
starting goalie I can think of that was
and
a
he
right
was a good
catcher.
Canadian kid. But again, a Quebecois, which they haven't been producing the goalies like they have lately. They did in the past, at least I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
By the
there's
way,
still one, and I've got him as my starter.
Well, and let's bring it into things. You tell me, who are your goalie options for Canada?
With how bad our goalie options are looking, I've got the Flower
Here we go.
start.
Oh, that's tough.
That's bringing in veteran experience. He's won before. He's played for Canada on the
Oh, he
highest
sure
levels.
has. But he couldn't even crack the number one spot in his prime in 2010. And as good as he still is, it's concerning that that is our number one option now.
Yeah.
More than 10 years, 13, 14 years later. Actually, 15,
Realistically, that
15 years later.
2010 team when he didn't crack, I think Brodeur was in that top spot because of his legacy.
Yeah,
Brodeur was
well,
not in a
Luongo was
spot.
really the top, but he took it over, and
Yeah,
the rest is history. But
it should have been Luongo,
it should have
Fleury,
been
Brodeur.
Luongo Fleury. Yeah, Brodeur was
Brodeur
crap
was there
against the
because of his
U.S.,
name.
but
He was past his prime. Like
again,
fuck.
Brodeur was crap against the U.S., but Canada bounced back and ended up. And the rest is history.
I
This
still
tournament's
remember
only
that
7
baseball bat
games.
swing.
Yeah, we don't have time to bounce back like that. Which, funny enough, all these years later, nobody remembers what a bad preliminary round Canada had in that tournament.
They
All people
almost got
remember is the
tossed.
gold medal game.
They
Nobody
almost got
remembers.
tossed.
Nobody remembers that they came sixth in the preliminary round, sixth out of 12, had to play a qualification game against Germany, which of course they blew them out.
Yeah.
Character building game, earned their spot against Russia in the damn quarterfinals, which we all thought would be the gold medal game. And then they came together. They blew out Russia. Yep, yep. Now we're going all the way. And they did it. Slovakia almost tied them in that semifinal, but they stayed alive. They beat the Americans in
How
overtime. Rest is
Demetriou.
history. But point being, nobody remembers what a hard time they had in the preliminary round. And the biggest problem against the US is that they had the wrong starting goalie going. We'll tell you what, we don't have that opportunity this year.
No.
You lose that game against the US in the preliminary round because you have the wrong goalie going, you might not get another shot at them.
Yeah.
In
Looking at
2010,
the
they did.
quality of teams, 2010 Canada team, there was at least 10 Hall of Famers. That
Yeah,
American team has like three if you're
Corey Perry, for
lucky.
God's sakes. But yeah, like
Yeah.
you lose them in the preliminary round, you bounce back, and then you face them again in the gold medal game and win. Well, if you lose to them once, I don't know if we're getting another opportunity to face them again in this tournament, right? That's the problem.
Not to mention if you beat them, it means your scoring was on. The American
So we've,
goaltending this year, you can't rely on your
oh
offense.
God,
Those guys can shut you out.
the fact that people are talking about Anthony Stolars in the conversation now, you already have
I I
Thatcher
almost had him as
Demko,
an
who,
extra because I was like, he's been pretty good.
and we're not here to talk about the
It's
Americans, but like Thatcher Demko, Jake Ottinger, Connor Hellebuck, Jeremy Swayman.
they I think they've
Can
got
we
five
trade you?
goalies in
Can
the
we trade
states
you
that
for
would
a goalie?
start.
They got
Yeah,
5 that would start
maybe
for
not
Canada.
Swayman. Maybe not
Well,
Swayman, but
Swayman would start for
I think that
Canada.
all four of them would easily start. But I don't want Swayman. But
Again, we're not here to
that's
talk about the Americans, but like we said, our goaltending is a concern. And you said Flower, maybe your option for Canada, which I don't blame you. Even if he makes the team in any capacity, just his leadership, his ability to lead as by example for the other goalies. But
I almost think he has to be the third goalie
but who are
name
your
because you
other
need that
options?
leadership.
Who are your other
Yeah,
options?
it's not like we're swimming in talent like the
It's not.
states where it's like, yeah, you can forgo some leadership for just skill.
Yeah.
We don't have
And like
that.
at
We
forward we
need
can do, but
Flower.
and even at forward
Yeah,
for Canada, right? I've sacrificed some talent for some leadership in my lineup, but we can do that. At
yeah,
goaltending, with that
yeah.
being said, I mean, like you said, Flower, who are your other two guys?
I got Flower starting. I got Skinner as my backup,
Okay.
who could easily take the starting job.
He could earn it,
If
like I
Flower
said,
has a slightly rough game and they give the reins to Skinner and he plays well, I could totally see Skinner taking it away.
for sure.
And then I've got Aiden Hill as my third. I
Okay.
think he's been solid enough. Outside, like it's weird. People see Bennington's cup and they're like, "Oh, great, he should be there." But
And
Aiden
they
Hill
don't see,
doesn't get credited.
well, because Logan Thompson played a good portion of the season for that team. By the way, the former Brock Badger, Logan Thompson, like I said, was on my radar as one of the potential other options. Again,
He's my fourth option.
he's had a damn good season so far, and he's been good in the past. It's tough putting him on the national team, but with the lack of talent we have, I think if he continues to do well this year, he puts himself in that conversation. And in the next
He,
few weeks, when they've got to finalize that roster, he's going to make it real tough for them to make that decision. So
yeah.
will Aiden Hill.
Last
Hill
night was
Hill
Logan
hasn't.
Thompson's first loss, and it was I wouldn't even say his fault. Like the Capitals collapsed last night. Like the one plus we can say about our goaltending, I don't think we need unbelievable goaltending. Like I
Right.
think any goalie that Canada fields, they're gonna benefit from playing in front of a
They just need to
superstar
be
team.
solid enough. So we need
Yeah.
someone who's been consistent enough this year.
And even with like our defense, I would say this is the weakest defense Canada's been able to field in a while, and it's still
That is, oh,
arguably,
I don't know about that. They're still solid. The problem is though,
yeah, I would say easily like there's a very easy argument that they're the best defensive core, but
yeah,
just in
we
terms of
have so
Canada,
many righties that are out of the lineup because there's too many. But
yeah.
I like to go with the solid defensive guys, not the more offensive
Like
guys.
I'd still it'd be neck and neck with the States on defense, but you
But who
could
do they have that solid shutdown, right? Like they have Adam Fox with his offense. They have
and
Keandre Miller.
McAvoy.
They have,
But
yeah,
there's
Charlie McAvoy with his chirping and all that.
yeah, that's
What,
just gonna
Torrey
get them.
Krug? Torrey Krug, yeah, he can shut us down. But Seth Jones, is he even going to make the team? Like that guy dishes up
Oh
turnovers.
no,
Like,
he's not making that team. I mean, if he does, I'd be happy, but I've watched him playing in Chicago and it's not looked good
yeah.
for him.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Americans, which,
Yeah. All right, we'll go to forwards where forwards this is just Canada's strength. Like we
without a
undoubtedly were
doubt,
fielding
it's
the top forwards in the
just
tournament.
a
I
matter
don't
of
think
choosing the best guys, right?
yeah. I got my top line as the Nova Scotia connection. I've got Marchand on the left with Crosby in the middle and McKinnon on the right. Purely, like, don't get me wrong. I think McDavid at this point in his career is
Yeah.
better than Crosby, but
Yes.
it's a seven
Experience.
game, yeah, seven
Yeah.
game
We need
tournament experience.
Team
Crosby's going to
Canada,
be the
been there, done
captain.
that. I couldn't agree with you more. Like,
I,
again, I
I,
had them on the second line, but we agree on that line combination. There was no separating them, right?
yeah, that's
Second line, first
absolutely
line. I mean, whatever. Second line, first line in this tournament, probably getting the same amount of ice time realistically. But in a clutch situation, like 2 minutes left in the game in a tie game, maybe up by one, buddy, I want the Crosby, McKinnon, Marchand line out
yeah.
there.
If we're down a goal,
Maybe
I'd
not,
like to
but
really mix things up. Maybe throw McDavid on the left wing with McKinnon
why
and
not,
Crosby.
right?
That
Why
would be
not?
incredible.
But we agree on that line though. Crosby, Marchand, McKinnon, the Nova
I,
Scotia connection.
I'd
I
be
didn't I
pretty
didn't even need
confident.
to mention it to you. You still agree.
I'm pretty confident that's going to be the most consistent line for
Well,
Canada.
Craig Button disagreed with us, but like
Greg
I
Button's
sure
not
as hope I sure as hell hope Craig Button's not right because you cannot separate those guys.
no.
You
You
cannot.
get in your right mind. For me, this is where it gets interesting. We start
Second
getting to
line.
a different one. My second
Yes.
line, I've got McDavid centering Bedard on the left
Okay.
and Mitch on the right.
Oh,
I think
okay. You agree with Craig Button. You want Mitch playing with McDavid.
I part of me wants a little bit of grit there. So if you're gonna put Hyman in, I kind of like Hyman with Bedard and
Yes.
McDavid. I think Bedard has to be on that second line with McDavid because
I would have agreed a month ago, but Bedard, I mean, Bedard is still almost averaging a point per game for God's sakes.
yeah,
But
on a bad team, like
yeah,
you look at the
but it's like,
teams like McDavid came into, they weren't good, but he played with Taylor
yeah,
Hall in his
I had
first
I had
year.
some arguments with people about this, about whether Bedard was going to put up 100 points in his second year, and I said, well, if he doesn't, then he's not really living up to his expectations. His expectations are ridiculously, stupidly high, but
Yeah,
that's what we set on him for what he's proven so far. And Crosby had his best season ever in his second year. McDavid had an incredible season his second year. Bedard still might. The season's barely started, and he's almost a point per game. But
it's a
without a
different
doubt,
era too.
without a doubt, Bedard's got to be in that lineup. If he gets really hot, sure, I would 100% put him with McDavid over Reinhardt. But for now, I didn't have him on that line. But look, I can 100% see where you're coming from. But Mitch,
I want
though,
to see
Mitch,
that
that.
magic.
But why would you put Mitch with McDavid?
I don't know. It's weird. I almost have a Toronto bias in the sense he shouldn't be there in some ways, but I think
On the
like
roster? But
like on the roster.
you
But
called me Toronto
looking at
biased
his
for putting
past
Riley on
seasons,
there.
it's weird. Like Marner's deserved it. Like unbiased, I think he has. Like I not to say I agree with
But
how he
Marner's
played at the end of last
dedication is
season.
the issue. Like I said, like Tavares going and captaining Team Canada in the World Championship after his team
Mhm.
goes out in the playoffs. That's dedication. When has Marner done that? I don't. Has Marner ever played in the World Championship for Canada? I don't think so. Again, I think he deserves a spot on that team, but I'd
Yeah, I
say
don't think
third
he
line
has.
at best.
but he's an 100-point guy.
Well, 90-point guy. Has he ever even put up 100? I
Oh,
don't. He's put up
I just
96.
looked at. He had 97 in 72 games, and then
Yeah, because he
99
gets
in
injured a
80.
lot, which that's the thing. But I mean,
That's
again, I'm looking at point production, right? A couple of years ago, I would have put Jonathan Huberdeau on that first line. Boy, have
yeah.
times changed because that guy's not even on my roster now, but
Like since 2018, Marner's a point per game player every
he is,
season.
yes. But there's a lot of guys that are more than that now. Anyway, let's move on to your third line. So who have you got on the third line then? If Bedard and
Okay.
Marner are on McDavid's wings, who have you got on your third?
One guy starting with the lock on the team. Don't know
Point.
if he deserved his lock, but yeah, Point is gonna
Uh,
center, and this is where I come to
we agree on
chemistry.
that. Point third line center.
I got Stamkos on his
Stammer?
left. Get
Sure.
some chemistry, and then I got Reinhardt on the right.
Look, as recently as last night, I had Stammer on points left wing with Marner on their right, the
I
division
don't mind
connection.
that
But
either.
but
I don't mind
Stammer,
that.
and I still have him on my roster as a scratch. But just the start of the season that he's had, and with the fact that he's getting old, and with other guys that are doing better, like it was a super hard decision doing this. But I didn't put him in my lineup. I really didn't.
It's weird. We both have some recency
Even
bias in different places. Like I have
yeah,
I have recency bias with
with Hyman.
not putting Hyman, but
Yeah,
non-recency
well,
bias with Stamkos because
even as I thought
me,
about
Stamkos has the
Stamkos
body
as
of
the
work.
13th forward, but I said nope, because 13th forward. Again, I'm thinking from an IHF perspective where you dress 13 forwards. It's not the case, but still, you have a guy who's gonna in the first 2 or 3 games they come in and out, rotating between the fourth line, and you decide who stays in. But Stamkos is not that kind of guy. Stamkos is the guy. He's either on there playing with his big guys that he has chemistry with, scoring, or he's not in the lineup at all. Like he's not a bubble guy that comes in and out and plays a role. Stamkos is the guy that comes in the lineup and snipes.
Yeah, you need some consistency for
So
Stammer.
it's like Stamkos is not a 13th forward. He's not really a fourth liner. Like he's a guy you put him in a good role or you don't. Basically, I feel that way about him.
I've got Stamkos in there.
Yeah, and
It's
fair enough.
I think a slight fluke being on a new team with like I think who else is on that? They signed like five big free agents this year. I think they're
Yeah,
just struggling to gel.
fair
I
enough. And again, slow start, and just like Hyman's slow start, I forgive him for that because I know the Oilers did that last year, and look at how they bounced back, and look at the 50 goals Hyman put up, and he's done pretty damn good with McDavid the couple of years before that too. So that's why I had that trust in him.
Mhm.
Now I know you put Reinhardt on the right wing, which I agree with that too. If Reinhardt wasn't playing with McDavid, he'd be on that line because I'm not messing
Yeah,
with the Nova Scotia line, right?
that Reinhardt's a lock in the
So
team.
Reinhardt is a lock after the last year or two that he had. He's a lock
I
in the
was even
lineup.
looking at his stats when we were off camera. He's
He's
never really had a bad season. Like
no,
he's
he's just playing
constantly
in
improved.
Florida, which and we talked about this off camera with Florida, the fact that the 2014 draft, they have 3 of the top 4 picks, all of which are
Mhm.
Canadian, but no wonder what a good team they are now, for God's sakes. They have 3 of those top 4 picks. The only one they don't have is Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah,
But yeah, Sam Bennett, who I don't even have on this, I don't even have him on the radar. And Ekblad, who we can talk about. I know I put him, well, he's a fringe guy, maybe a scratch, maybe off the roster, but Reinhardt, though, like you said, under the radar, playing in Florida, and then putting up his 50 goals last year. Now he's on the radar, but whether he plays with McDavid, whether he plays with Point, he's going to be having a big role on that team either way.
yeah. He's a secondary sniper on the team
Yep,
for sure. I could even see for power play. I'd probably say he's going to be on the second power play.
same. Which yeah, we'll get into that. But your fourth line now, which
Fourth line's where we get interesting. I got someone that
as
I
you've left
don't
some
think
guys
a
off.
lot of people have on the radar, but I got Tavares. I think he's earned his spot centering that
Well,
fourth
and we
line.
talked about him. I had him as my 13th forward, who I barely kept him off the fourth line.
And then I got Shifley on the right wing. That was
Yep,
just
same
like
here.
you.
We agree. Okay, so we're the
This is
same.
where we're going. We're going a little bit off the map here.
Yeah.
I got Barzal on my fourth line left wing.
Well, who's your center then? Shifley?
Tavares.
Tavares. Okay, yeah. Barzal center, Tavares left wing, or Barzal whatever.
I want
Tavares
Tavares
center.
centering.
Yeah, Tavares center. Well, who's on your left wing?
Barzal.
So he's playing his off wing. Yeah. I mean, I'd almost go Barzal center, Tavares left wing, and then they can both take faceoffs on their good side. But I
Maybe.
100%, I see where you're coming from. I mean,
I
you
think
you said,
Barzal just doesn't get to display that speed all the time. And
yeah. You
New
said we were
York.
going to disagree on this so much, but actually our fourth line is kind of the same.
Stone is my first guy that's like the extra because
And
I
he's the
wasn't.
guy that I just barely put in ahead of Tavares because he's earned it. Just like Tavares has earned a spot on the roster, like we discussed. But
I
we
have
agree on a lot of things. I don't know if you put your 13th forward in Mark Stone, which again, this tournament is NHL rules, not IAHF rules, which is a shame because in international tournaments like this, having that 13th forward is so valuable because someone
mhm.
who deserves to be on the roster, who can play a role, but doesn't necessarily fit in that lineup, you have them on the bench as an extra who can play in any situation. And
And
that is why actually I had guys like, okay, we'll get into this, but some of the extra forwards that I had, like Matt Duchene.
I didn't even think of Duchesne, but
Okay,
for
talk about your
lefty,
defense. Talk about your defense
I'll,
first.
I'll say a couple. I had three big extras on forward that this is where I wasn't sure. Hyman, Lafreniere,
Oh yeah,
and Marchessault. They were ones that I
Marchessault is a good choice, but
Marchessault's lost his spot because of this season. He was a
and
bubble guy.
Stone and like I just feel like if you're gonna pick one of the Golden Knights guys, it's Stone. And Stone as a righty can still play his off wing. But yeah,
Laffy's
I had quite a few extra forwards, but let's just talk about your defense first. How about
defense, I think we're pretty close on. I got
okay,
Morrissey McCarr top pair, no
same as
argument.
me.
That's pretty locked.
And second pair was
Second pair, this was initially I thought of it right after I wrote it out and was like, okay, that I could see where you want to change. I had Theodore Dobson, but now looking at it, I'd probably want Theodore Petrangelo.
yep, just like me, just like we discussed.
Third pair, this was the hardest pick on my team, I think. Dobson, I think for sure gets on it.
Yep,
But then I was so torn between Taves, Riley, and Bouchard playing his
Bouchard
offside.
playing his offside though.
I ended
And
up
I think
going with
Bouchard and Dobson though, both like such offensive D men. There isn't really a shutdown guy on there.
I ended up going with Taves.
Okay,
I don't know why. I like
fair.
Riley. Just something
And
about
look, you want to put Taves with McCarr, but
that's what
at the
I
end of
was
the day,
thinking.
Taves isn't going to be a top pair guy on this team, you feel, and you
No.
don't want to move McCarr.
Going
Oh,
into
I see.
last year, I probably would have said Taves McCarr could be a
Going
top
into this year,
pair.
I would have put Taves with McCarr. Even last night when I was making this lineup, I thought about that. But Taves is off to a slow start offensively this year, and I just said there's other guys there that can do the job, so I took him off. But
And
he's
McCarr
still
or
on my team as a scratch.
Morrissey's absolutely killed it last season and going into
Morrissey's been
this year.
incredible.
He's established himself like
Like we
he's a
discussed,
true 1D.
yeah, both his offense and his defense, just like McCarr. I trust him either way. He's a perfect pairing for him.
He
And
plays
it's
a lot
great
like
having him as a lefty, which we need.
yeah. He plays really similar game to Hedman. Obviously not as big and bone
And
crushing
great,
type
because we
of
could
guy,
use a guy like him.
like a true two-way D-man, which are kind of rare in today's NHL.
Yeah, right. And like McCarr is gifted, but Morrissey's not even that far behind him.
Yeah. They're just a different style player. McCarr
A
is
little bit.
McCarr's an like he plays all right defense, but he's an
Yeah.
offense first D guy.
So who was your seventh D man was Devon Taves. You left Riley off that, but I assume he'd maybe still be a healthy scratch on that team.
I'd probably put Riley as my healthy scratch, which is weird because the righties are so
Yeah.
talented.
Well,
I
and
just
Taves is either way because, like we said, there's only 6D dressing,
yeah,
but
I just don't really trust Bouchard that much.
and that's what I mean. Like such an offensive guy, but defensively is what matters, and that's why,
He's a bit of
again,
a liability defensively. Like
me
it's not
put
even
I
like he's
put
not
him,
great.
but his offense you just can't leave him off. I feel like, and that's why I put him with Riley, which I hesitated, but I did that trusting that Morgan Riley in a role like this will be the shutdown guy. Forget about the offense. I know Morgan Riley can play the shutdown role too, and he needs to know in a tournament like this, his offense is not needed because there's other guys. So he can be the shutdown guy on that pair.
That's exactly why I left Bouchard off, is that there's so much
Yeah.
offense being produced in this lineup. Like even
And Dobson,
Petrangelo's.
look, Dobson and Bouchard, it's one or the other. I was so torn between the two. Again, I mean, Dobson, keep his stick in one piece, that would help. But yeah, I was again, next game, scratch Bouchard and put in Dobson, right? One or the other. Or you
They'll
could
be
even,
fight. That'll be a
yeah, you know,
spot. Like
It'll
that
be a
third
spot
D pair is probably the
on the
biggest
right side.
question.
And now I want to talk about my extras because look, I don't know how many scratches they're going to carry. Again, like we probably like I made my lineup with 13 forwards and 7D, so there's already
Mhm.
two extras there. But there's going to be a few extra scratches as well who might not even play. But with injuries and stuff, obviously I left Stamkos off. You put him on. I left Barzell off. You put him on. But I mean, Nick Suzuki. A lot of people had him in their forward lineup.
I have him way down. I did write him in here, but I don't think
Whether he's
he's.
a scratch, whether he's a notable snub, either way. And
I
then
think
Matt
he's a
Duchene.
notable snub at this point.
Matt Duchene, like I said, look, he's played on Team Canada at the top level, and he's had like he's been there,
He's
done
good. He's
that. He is such
beneficial.
a shutdown guy. Again, if we had the 13th forward spot, he would be great for that. We don't, but maybe against the US, he could be a fourth line center who still good enough to be in the lineup. But with his face-off ability, he's been a shutdown penalty kill guy at the top level before. He's still putting up the offensive numbers at his age. Not as good as he used to be, but still decent. He's a guy who could possibly be a dark horse contender on this team. I mentioned Jordan Kyrou. I mean, he's a great offensive player. I just didn't really see a spot for him though. And then some sleeper guys, the two Dallas Stars, not the two. I remember Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin for years. They were the two, but
Yeah, I
I'm
don't think
saying
either of them are
Logan
sleeping.
Stankoven and Wyatt Johnston,
Wyatt
both.
Johnson was there for me.
But Logan Stankoven, look at what he did in the World Juniors a couple years ago for
Yeah,
Canada. What he did last year late in the season, and what he's doing now. He's earning himself a spot, whether he
I
makes it
only
or not.
don't. I only don't have him because he doesn't have like.
I don't see a spot for him in the lineup.
Yeah,
Whether yeah, and
one guy
Johnston
I
as
think a
well.
lot of people are forgetting, Ryan O'Reilly.
Look, I had him on this list as whether he's a notable snub or a healthy scratch or an honorable mention. I had him on this list, but I couldn't take too many, so I took Duchesne instead of him. But similar role though,
Similar role.
shut down.
I think the reason you would maybe want Duchesne over O'Reilly is O'Reilly's really lost a step, I think. Like he was never quick to begin with, but ever since he signed in Nashville when he left Toronto, it seems like he's lost even more of a
Even
step. Like
but
people say
look, even his
Tavares
year
is.
with the Leafs, he was kind of washed up. He bounced back a little bit since, but before that, he was still putting up elite offensive numbers. And now he's not really doing that. He
Like
had a decent season last year, but I see what you're saying. Like as a shutdown guy on this team, because at the end of the day, that's why we'd be taking him. I'd rather have Duchesne, and even Duchesne, like he's a healthy scratch at best. So
yeah, and you need speed as well. Like we're building a team that's gonna be able to beat the Americans. I don't think Finland or Sweden is really gonna put up a challenge. Maybe their top
but
guys
they
will.
might,
Their
yeah.
their depth isn't there. Like
And
our depth has all stars on it. There's guys on Sweden and Finland that aren't even NHLers. Like we
well, but you remember this tournament is only NHLers, so that's an advantage
oh,
for
that's
us,
true.
and that they're not even allowed to play their non-NHLers.
Oh, forgot about that. So it's like their depth is going to be their weakness for sure.
Yes, their top six
Top
forward
six will
and
be
D are gonna be incredible. But yeah, their depth, that's where we'll beat them. And that's why we need to make sure that the bottom part of our lineup is as good as it can be.
yeah. I just don't know what Ryan O'Reilly is gonna
Again,
do
I
against
see where
the
you're coming
States.
from, and that's why I took Duchesne. But so my last I mentioned eight. Yeah, it was eight forwards potentially, whether they're scratches, whether they're just snubs, who could have a spot. And the last one was Alexis Lafreniere, which
Yeah.
Craig Button put him in his lineup, which hey, you know what? Like he's having a good start to the season and he's earning himself that spot. Like he's a couple of years ago, I would have 100% put him on this team, but he's not made the progress we expected. Well, I'll tell you what, now he is. Now he's
He
coming
is
around.
now.
He's playing like we expected.
And I think
Now
part of the reason he
he's
might
having a
be in
good
there is
season,
because lefties. We don't have lefties.
right? So whether he's playing well enough right now to earn himself a spot on that team in the next few weeks, I don't know. But look, despite my roster that I constructed so passionately, there's definitely room for him to earn that spot if he does.
He'd be pretty much the only natural left-handed left winger on the team,
Right.
other
So
than
take Stone
Marshall.
off his off wing, move Bedard, maybe, maybe take Tavares out of that lineup, whatever. Or take
Even
Shifley
Tavares, though,
out.
he's not a
Again,
natural
I put
winger.
Shifley there because of the success he's had lately. You could move someone else to the right and then take Shifley right out and put Laffy there. So that's an option. And then defense, it kind of goes without saying. Like I only had three lefty extras, but Taves we already discussed. Thomas Chabot, maybe. Darnell Nurse a few years
Hudson Bocha.
ago for sure, but I don't know. Darnell Nurse now, I
Yeah.
just feel like there's better guys. Again,
Yeah, no.
The Oilers last year had like six guys that could have played for Canada. They'll have at least three either way,
That
maybe
really
four,
shrunk
maybe
though.
four.
I
But
don't think Nuge is even really
Nugent
in the
Hopkins,
conversation.
Nugent Hopkins, I had him in the conversation last year. I don't now. But
Darnell isn't even on the
Nurse is in the
radar.
conversation. I have him in the conversation because he's a lefty D man, which again, after Taves, we only have Shabbat and then him.
He's a
So they're
liability
the
though.
only
I almost
extras.
take like Chikrin over him. Or is
Oh,
Chikrin
that's another
American?
option. No,
Chikrin
Chikrin's
might be
Canadian.
American. Oh, he
He's
is?
Canadian. I didn't include him, but righty D man, there's a lot of snubs. Okay, Drew
Yeah.
Doughty, we talked about him. If Doughty's healthy by then, he's on the roster no matter what, whether he plays or not, because you need that experience.
I think he'd take
Look,
out Dobson. I think you'd have Petrangelo,
but look,
Doughty, Makar
you
would be
haven't
your.
mentioned this name once, but Dougie Hamilton. I did not put him in my lineup.
Didn't think of him.
We have too many righties though. That's the thing. I don't.
Yeah.
A few
We're
years
we're
ago,
stacked on the right
look,
side.
3 years ago, or like 2022 Olympics, he probably would have been on the team. But I feel like right now there's
Yeah.
just no need for him. So and then Chris
Because
Letang,
he's an offensive defenseman. He's just
yes, Chris Letang, same thing. He's old. He's past
Tanger.
his prime, and he's again another guy who may have lost his opportunity because we've had so many best on best tournament possibilities that have come and gone that he hasn't been on. And then Aaron Ekblad, obviously the first overall pick from 2014, still great for the Florida Panthers, but with his offensive defense abilities, he's had a lot of injuries, some lacking consistency. With the other options that we have on the right side, I just don't see a spot for him in the lineup.
I'd
So,
almost take like Montour over
well, and that
Ekblad.
was my last guy, Montour, his former teammate, which again, I don't know if those guys will even make it as healthy scratches. I just put them on my list because they were at least in contention, but at the end of the day, if they're there for depth, whether we even take them on the roster or not, I don't know.
It's like the opposite of what it used to be. 10 years ago, Canada, it was like you could pretty much only get away with fielding one or two righties. Now it's the opposite. Like,
But even in 2014, right, Subban was left off the team for that reason. Well, he made it, but he was not played much. But
but I
also,
think
and
who are
it's
the
like we talk
only
about with Ekblad, with Subban, it was the fact that he's such a great offensive defenseman. But we have guys like Weber who he can put up the offense, but also play some damn good defense. Which would you rather take?
yeah, Weber, Petrangelo, Doughty were like locks on the right side 10
Yeah.
years
And
ago.
then Subban was like, man,
Odd one out.
but now even more so, like Ekblad, Montour, even Dougie Hamilton. Like I just don't see a spot for those guys on this team
No,
because we have so many righties.
yeah. Like Makar, Petrangelo, guaranteed have to be there. Like there's no way around it.
And
Those
yeah,
guys
yeah,
are
Peter
top.
Angelo, I think at the start of the season could have been in doubt. Even like 2026 Olympics type thing. I had him as a seventh D man. Again, that's in a year, so he still might be by then. But I think right now, with the season he's having so far, you've got to have him as a regular in that lineup. And he's your veteran. He is your shutdown guy.
As well. Yeah, like Morrissey, Theodore, Makar, Petrangelo. I think that's the guaranteed top four.
Yep. And then yeah, like I said, Riley will play a little bit, and then Bouchard and Dobson might split as the other offensive third pair man. But hey, having an offensive defenseman like that, regardless of which one it is, on your third pair, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So I think it's goaltending. Well, that about does it for our rosters. I think we've kind of shared each of ours, and there's some agreements, some disagreements, but we've talked about our extras, which there's some common ground there, right? Guys that you've got slightly out of your lineup, I've got in my extras, whether they're scratches or whether they're just notable snubs, either way.
We've got pretty similar
I
lineups
think
for
same
sure.
goes both ways, but was there any notable guys that you had as potential scratches or potential guys even just on your radar that I might have left off altogether?
I initially had Thomas Wilson, but
Do
not
you
really sure
really?
about him anymore.
He is having a pretty good start to his year, but I just can't see him with. He's a right-handed shot too, right?
Yeah, and
I
we
don't
got
see
so
a
many
spot for him.
righties, and he's a bit of a liability in terms of like what if he gets suspended or does something stupid. Like
You've
I
got
think
other gritty guys that can do it,
if you want the grit, you have to go with Hyman over him.
right? And I had him in my lineup, which, and you didn't have him, but you agreed on that if he's in the lineup, he's with McDavid, just like
Yeah, he's the
Chris
same with
Kunitz.
Marchand.
Chris Kunitz, 2014 too. Like by the end of the tournament, he wasn't playing with Crosby anymore because they found that Bergeron chemistry. But Kunitz was scratched by then, I think. And
Yeah,
the only reason Kunitz made that team was to play with Crosby. And I
yeah,
think it's going to be the same for this one with Hyman with McDavid. But like for God's sakes, he was a 50 goal scorer last year. So I think
yeah,
it would be an upgrade from that. The league was different then than it is now.
yeah.
And like
50
we said,
goals.
finding chemistry is so hard to come by, which is why Hyman and McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, Marchand is clutch.
Even
Even
Stamkos point for me or Tavares if you want him with Marner, like pretty
Tavares,
much
like
have
even
to.
look when I had Tavares in my lineup, which I just took him out as the 13th. But if I have him in my lineup, I wouldn't put him on the fourth line. I'd put him on the third line with Point and Marner because Tavares and Marner haven't played together all the time, but they've played together enough over the last few
Yeah,
years. Not to mention Point being in their division, he's familiar with them. So
half of
that
this
right there.
lineup is built on chemistry. Like
And
we've,
same with Peter Angelo, Theodore, and
yeah,
potentially Makar and Taves. If Taves is in the lineup, I'd want him to play with Makar.
yeah, half the lineup's built on chemistry because this tournament's even shorter than international
Like we
tournaments.
discussed, right? It's shorter than the Olympics, even where they didn't.
Yeah,
And like we
seven
talked
games
about
maximum. It's
the goalie situation, Canada 2010 had time to realize that Brodeur wasn't their guy, switched to the other guy, bounced back and won. But I tell you,
yeah,
we lose to the Americans once. That might be it, you know.
mhm,
And again, that's the Americans. The other teams too. The Swedes are dangerous. The Finns are dangerous. Luckily, we
yeah,
don't have the Russians, but at the same time, there's only four teams. So if you don't even come second, then we're kind of letting our country down, not even coming second. So
yeah.
basically, it's do or die. If we don't win, even coming second wouldn't feel so great. And then even that, like,
We should be in that championship game.
yeah, it's without a
There's
doubt.
like way too much skill and experience. Like that's the one thing that I would knock on the Americans is they don't really have the international like pedigree that we do. We've got guys,
Right.
a good
Our
portion of
guys,
our roster has won gold for
they've
Canada
won
at
gold at
some
some
level.
level and they've played together at other times in their career internationally, whereas the US, not necessarily, but when they do play at the top level, no matter how good they are against other teams, they will build themselves just to beat Canada. And that is
Yeah.
the difference. We treat all our opponents of that caliber equally, which, of course, in a tournament like this, they're all of that caliber. Whereas Americans, they'll mess you up psychologically because they don't bring their best game against Sweden. They might not bring their best game against Finland, but they
But
save
they're
all
bringing
their
it.
energy just to play against Canada. And if they beat us in that one game and it's a meaningful game, no, we'll hear about it for years to come.
Yeah.
So we got to beat them.
They're the pesky little brother at the moment.
And with that being said, was there anyone else on my roster that I left off that you would have mentioned? I think I've mentioned all the guys that I had in mind, whether they were on your roster or not.
I think pretty well everybody's been mentioned. The only one I think I don't know if he's really in the conversation, but Montembeau, he was kind of my last guy that I was
That's
like,
fair.
ah, he starts it hot, he could, but he's kind of done exactly
Uh,
what I expected. He's been good on a bad team, but it's not translating to wins or it's not stealing games.
yeah, it's tough. Again, goaltending is tough, and we've mentioned it's tough because the roster is going to be finalized in a couple of weeks, and we've just mentioned so many different names. But
You could
at the
almost
end of the
say
day,
Stallers is in the conversation now.
well, he's American, but for the US at
Oh,
least,
I thought he was Canadian actually.
nope. But yeah, at that point, though, like at the end of the day, we just need to name three guys, and that whichever one of them ends up being the starter, whichever one of them ends up being the third string, we just gotta announce them. I know it was
Yeah.
pretty bold of you to pick Fleury, but I can see where you're coming from, and
I'm
me
confident with
me
my third
picking
goal.
Kemper was the same idea.
Kemper's not a bad option either. Well, not a bad, not a, nobody's a good option at this point for Canada. I'm not
That's our
confident in
weakness, man.
anyone.
I'd say B minus at best is our goaltending. Every other part of our team
If
can be an
that,
A plus, but
we don't even there's not a single goalie in the NHL. I don't think that you would say is all-star caliber from Canada,
not at the moment.
which is like first time
And the
ever.
moment is what matters because whether they're having a great season in 2 months from now, this roster is going to be finalized in the next few weeks. So we kind of
Yeah,
need to know.
literally all the elite goalies in the NHL are Russian and American. There's
Yeah.
not really an in between to anywhere.
But it's the rest of our team that's going to make up for it. And hopefully one of our guys does step up. So on that note, I mean, maybe we could discuss our special teams just a tiny bit, which I mean, it's going to be our power play unit is going to be great no matter what lineup you had.
Yeah.
But with the lineup that I had, get this. Again, you want Hyman with McDavid. So I put Hyman on the first penalty kill, first power play unit on the right wing with Crosby at center, McKinnon on left wing, with that shooting angle, McDavid on left point, McCarr on right point. And then second unit was Braden Point centering Sam Reinhart and Connor Bedard with Morrissey and Marner on the point.
No real complaints. I like it. I
You'd
think
put Stamkos in there, I know, because you had him on your team and I didn't.
I'd
But
have Stamkos on my. You could almost make an argument for Reinhardt on that second power play as
yeah,
well.
well, I had him on the right wing second power play, but
Oh, okay,
yeah. But
but
if I see if Stamkos is on in the lineup, I'd want him on the left point second power play.
and
I'd take Marner off.
I think saying McDavid is left point is a little misleading, especially with
But
that top power play. It's going to be a 1-3-1 where
yeah,
Hyman's going to stick in the middle of the net, McCarr's going to
but
play
you have
top, and
Cros
your
like
other three
there was
float.
no need for McDavid to play center when you have
Yeah,
Crosby taking the faceoffs, and
it's misleading in the sense though that it's like power play. You
McDavid
don't
is the
really
one
have.
quarterbacking it.
Yeah, they're going to be McKinnon, Crosby, and McDavid are going to
Hyman
be
is just there to
closing.
stand out front and to make tips and to
Yeah,
get the rebounds.
you can almost Crosby's almost there too. Like
Yeah,
McCarr, McKinnon, and
it's a
McDavid
great
are
unit.
so nasty and creative. You could just have like two great tippers just causing havoc in front of the net.
And then
Like that
penalty
power play
kill,
throws you so many looks. Like there's no way they don't break through
right?
and be efficient.
And then penalty kill. Like I had Robert Thomas as my fourth line center, and what's crucial about him is his face-off ability. In the last couple of years, he's putting up the points, but he's a two-way forward, and his face-off ability. I've got him on the penalty kill with Mitch Marner, and then the Golden Knights connection, Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo, and then second unit, I'd say Crosby and Marchand. Like even if
You could
Crosby
even throw
doesn't,
Stone. I know you had Stone in your lineup. He'd be a great
yeah,
penalty killer.
but Crosby and Marchand together, they'd be like those are guys. Even if Crosby doesn't kill penalties for the Penguins, you want him.
Yeah.
With Canada, none of these guys really kill penalties for their NHL teams for the most part, but
Other
Crosby
than the
at center with
defenseman, yeah.
Marchand, and then at defense there, I'd have McCarr and Morrissey. Keep that pair together, and
Yeah, the only penalty killer on here, at least for forwards, is Marner, and even
yep.
that is kind of a
And
strange.
again, Tavares as my extra forward, who might play some games, might not play. If he's in the lineup, I would factor him into that penalty kill somewhere because just his veteran presence and his ability to play any role, I would trust him in those situations as well if he's
I
in the lineup.
I'm liking the Bobby Thomas pick more and more. If you got him like for
Right,
penalty
right.
kill reasons,
Two
I think
way.
that would be his.
And I
If
mentioned Duchesne as a potential extra. If he's in the lineup under any circumstances, he's killing penalties. I think it's a long shot for him to be in the lineup if he even makes the team. But it's just a name to throw in there, right?
I
That's an
think if you're
option,
gonna take one guy that's just on the team strictly penalty killing, it's probably Bobby T.
right? Because he's a younger guy who puts up that offensive production and is still on the upwards
Defensively, he's
trajectory
got
in his career.
everything.
But
He's
he's there
fast. He's got a good
defensively. He
stick.
wins faceoffs.
Yeah, great stick, great face-off
Yeah,
man. He's pretty quick
we've got some
still.
good
He's good in
faceoff men on
corners.
this team, and that's what's big.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
a big thing we have over the other countries. There's like
Yeah,
six forwards who are elite face-off guys. The US has like one or two. Sweden's got one or two. Finns have like
I couldn't agree
Barkov.
more.
That's it.
Yeah.
We've got elite guys. Like we've McKinnon's a good face-off man now. Like he's
And
like a
I don't even have him
55%.
playing center, but if you need
Yeah.
him, it's like if they're on the other side of the ice, then sure he'll take the face off. Why not over Crosby? Crosby,
Like
McKinnon, McDavid is good enough,
he's
and
probably
then
the
yeah,
worst face-off man we have at center, but it's okay because
and
it's
then Robert
McDavid.
Thomas, and then Tavares if he's in the lineup.
Tavares
Even
is a great
Braden
face-off man.
Point,
Point is pretty
yeah,
good.
point's
Crosby's
not as
great.
good, but he's good enough.
Crosby and Tavares, those two are elite face-off men.
And
Like
then
I think
Robert
they're
Thomas
both
too.
around 60%.
Robert Thomas was around 60% last year.
Yeah. Even McKinnon's like mid-50s guy now. Like he's
Right. So
winning.
if they're on the same line, Crosby's on his bad side of the ice. Let McKinnon take it.
And even with guys that we've got like scratched and stuff like that, like Stamkos was a centerman at one point and he wasn't a bad face-off man.
Yeah.
Like there's guys to
So
win face-offs, especially that'll be a
yeah.
big thing is if we can win at the dot, we should be able to
Because
control
in this
pace.
day and age, everyone talks about possession, right? And face-offs
Mhm.
are where possession stems from on every play. It's one of the most
Yeah.
underrated skills in the game. And you're right, it's something that Canada has historically always been one of the best at.
Still to this day, like when I think of like top 10 face-off guys in the league, really I the only non-Canadians I think of in that conversation is probably like Matthews and Barkov.
Sure.
Everyone else, like there's I would say there's top 10 NHL face-off guys that we don't even have in our team. Like O'Reilly's definitely up there, but I don't think he cracks the
100%.
spot.
And yeah, I did mention him. I don't think he cracks a spot. Actually, then another guy that I wanted to mention who I didn't even put on my radar, but was worth mentioning was Dylan Strom, for God's sakes. The season he's having so far with Ovechkin. I don't think that's
Seven,
enough to put him in there, but
yeah.
talking about face-offs, though, as a centerman, a veteran, Nazem Kadri, I didn't even put him on my radar,
I thought
but
about him, but with his recent
so did I.
injuries, he looks
And
like he's kind of lost a step. But
with all the other guys that we have, there's no need for him. But
yeah,
again, that's just another like we talk about the depth that we have. That's just another guy that could have
but
been there that there wasn't a spot for.
he's a combination of a lot of guys. Like he can provide offense. He's nasty. He's gritty. He'd probably be a penalty kill first guy.
Yeah.
He can win faceoffs. He's
But the depth that we have, like we choose other guys over him, whatever guys we have, we know are the
yeah.
right choice. Goaltending is our only concern.
Like our forwards are crazy. We've
So
got Robert
whatever
Thomas
goal he
who's
plays just has to be good enough. I trust our defense. I trust our offense that will shut them down. And the rest comes down to it, right? We just got to be our best. And
I think we've got to win the games with our offense. Like
we do.
it's
And
our
there's no
offense is
reason it's not going to be like 2014 beating the US 1-0. We're not going to beat them 1-0. We got to beat them a little more than
yeah.
4-3 maybe.
They've got
The league
firepower,
has
but
changed.
we've got serious firepower.
We
No,
got serious firepower. They have serious skill. I'd put it that way.
I think we've got as much skill. I think top six to top six is really even. Our depth puts us out of the water against
Yeah.
any team.
And we talk about goaltending. They had the advantage in goaltending in 2010 too. They had Ryan Miller, but talk about the offense that we had.
I
You
don't
know
know
why
if
Crosby
it
scored
was
that
close
goal?
in 2010,
Do you know why
but
Crosby scored that goal? Miller was shutting everyone down, but Miller, if Crosby has the puck at that angle, the last thing he expected him to do was shoot. He was going on his knees and getting ready to poke check him because he thought that he was going to deke. And instead, Crosby slid the puck through. And if you watch the replay, that's why Miller was in that position. And that's why the puck went 5-hole. Actually, I didn't realize that until I read Brian Burke's book and he was the GM of that team and he talks about it. But you watch that replay, you can see Miller was totally getting ready to poke check him. And instead, Crosby
you
just stunned him shooting that.
gotta catch
And
them off
that's
guard.
why, right? Our offense can surpass good goaltending no matter who they have. And we just hope that that can make up for maybe our lack of goaltending, which again, hopefully one of our goalies steps up enough that we do not have that big of a lack of goaltending. But
And we've got IQ. Like top to bottom, our lineup is filled with like hockey savants.
right.
I don't know if I could say
And
that
that
about
is
the
what sets
States.
us apart from any other team.
Yeah. The States have some good like great hockey thinking guys, but the deeper you go
Not the
down the
same.
lineup, the more it's just they're a little more brute forcey kind of guys than like every single guy that's going to make Canada is like a scholar at hockey.
Yeah. And again, I say this about the Americans a lot, but they're a very skilled team. And look, you got guys you can score a Michigan goal, but can you win a puck battle?
Yeah, especially with like
Put it that way.
Jack Hughes, for example. Is he going to be a second line center for
Yeah.
them?
Like
I'm
I say
taking
Trevor
McDavid.
Zegras, I assume he's not even going to make the team, but
Yeah,
that's a guy that people hype up for his skill so much. But like, what does that matter? And yeah, like Jack
they're
Hughes, even Jason Robertson.
yeah, like it's Matthews is going to be their top center, and he's pretty good at puck battles and stuff like that. But is he going to be able to beat a Crosby at puck battle? Crosby's potentially the best guy ever in the corners.
Crosby is the best grinder of all time. He's one of the best players of all time as a grinder.
Yeah,
That's
like it's
basically what he is.
you're gonna Crosby's gonna neutralize Mc, or Matthews in the corners, and Matthews is really the only great board battle guy that the States have at Stenner. Like Jack Hughes is gonna get tossed around in the corners. He's not
Yeah.
gonna do too much. Eichel's like
Crosby,
average.
Marshall, McKinnon. Like that's almost like it's one of our best lines, but it's also kind of a checking line. Like if you want to
Yeah, if
shut down
you
the
can shut
Americans'
down
top
Kachuk,
line,
yeah, easily. I'm taking Marchand, Crosby, McKinnon over
even
whatever
the
the
Robert
Americans
Thomas
gonna
line.
throw, like
Or
Matt Kachuk.
you want to really shut them down, you can mix it up. But I'd have Robert Thomas centering with like maybe Mark Stone and someone else, maybe Marshall.
Yeah, that Nova Scotia connection is just a perfect line to me. That's why I have them number
Yeah,
one. There's nothing they can't
yeah,
do, and there's nothing anybody's better than them at.
exactly.
They'll
I
shut
mean,
down the American top line, no problem. Like who'd the Americans play? Probably Matthews, Kachuk.
I haven't looked into it, but they'll have a hell of a deep team too. But it's like we said, they don't have the versatility. It's a lot of guys that do kind of the same thing, and
Mhm.
that's what sets us apart. Their goaltending will be better, but I think that with our goalies, one of them at least playing at their best, we will compete with them in that regard. And if we can compete with them in goal, we can beat them in everything else.
Yeah, easy. Well,
And that is
not
what it
easy,
comes
but
down to.
for sure.
Yeah.
They'll be a tough matchup, but we
And
can.
Swedes and Finns, come on, we're like you're just talking about the Americans. Don't forget about those teams, especially Sweden, I feel like.
Their depth just doesn't scare me. Like we've got
I say Finland especially. Their
yeah,
depth with only NHL players is not what it would be if it was everyone.
yeah, like what the Finns got like Arturi Lehkonen as a second line winger. Like
Yeah.
that's not scary when we've got like MVP
And the
candidates on our
Finns
second line.
goaltending when they had like Tuukka Rask and uh Kari Lettinen,
Yeah.
they don't have those guys anymore. Who would
Who
their
are
top goalie
they?
be now? I think it's Saros.
Oh yeah. Saros and then like Lankinen.
Yeah.
Saros is good, but
But yeah, the
he's
Finns goaltending. Now the Americans have kind of passed
even
them
the
in that regard.
Swedes.
And then the
The Swedes
Russians,
don't
which like we said, they're not in this tournament, but
even the Swedes don't really have elite
yeah,
goaltending.
who's their
Probably
top guy?
Markstrom.
Right. That's what I think. Who else would it be? Philip Gustafson? I don't think
And
so.
no, it's probably Markstrom.
Yeah. So I think that just about does it. We're pretty confident in our team, but we've got to be because we're Canadians. And I think that this tournament is so important. And I don't even want to think about the state that men's hockey will be in Canada if we don't do well in this tournament. So let's not think about that. Let's just enjoy it. And
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens. Worst case, we've got the 2026 Olympics coming up too, but we've got a hell of a team coming in. And there's going to be guys that both of us want on this roster that don't make it. There's going to be guys that we didn't expect that will make it, but that's happened in 2010. It happened in 2014. It happened in 2016 too. We know that whatever guys they're going to put out there, they're on that team for a reason. So this is there's going to be a hell of a lot of people that disagree with me about the team that I've fielded here, the team that I've constructed this roster with. But at the end of the day, a
At the
few
end of the day,
guys
only
here and
one
there are going to
person's
be
opinion
different.
matters.
Yep.
It's
And
just the
that's the ones
GM.
making the team. Hopefully I'm pretty accurate and hopefully I'm going to be satisfied, but I think it's going to be a pretty damn good team either way, but they've just got to deliver. So we're in for a good one. I can't wait for it.
It'll be great,
It sure will be. And with that,
especially over the All-Star game.
exactly. Well, I think that just about does it, but we'll check in maybe in a few weeks. We'll see. And with that, hope everyone has a good one and enjoy the Four Nations face off.